What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast. Happy November 2026. Recording this a couple of days after the Las Vegas Grand Prix, Season 5, Episode 31. And look who it is again, reoccurring guest, back-to-back weekends. And I gotta say, Daniel Valente, welcome back to the F1 podcast.
Man, happy to be back. I might need a permanent chair till the end of this season, especially with the way this is going. It's like, every weekend there's something fresh and exciting and just an unexpected twist that we didn't know was coming.
So Daniel, just hear me out right now. Just hear me out. I'm just looking at some of the last episode titles that I have. New tr change in the Drivers' Championship. Did Lando Norris clinch the championship in Mexico? McLaren win back-to-back races. Who would have thought when we went to bed after the Vegas Grand Prix that Max is how many points back now?
Right
24?
now he's only 24.
Yeah.
It was 42 when majority of the world went to bed, or majority of North America, I should say.
Yeah. And yeah, so we were at Garden Bar Bodega, and I just want to first shout out everybody that was there. It was an amazing night. Daniel, hopefully we'll get you out to a race there sometime. But we're going to be back this Sunday at Garden Bar Bodega to catch the Grand Prix, Qatar Grand Prix. So just thank everybody who came out this past weekend to catch the Las Vegas Grand Prix. First off, Daniel, I guess I'm just going to have to ask you, when did you find out about the news? Did you stay up when the FIA ruled that McLaren's both DNF'd, oh, sorry, not DNF, disqualified for Las Vegas? What was kind of your rationale from a reporter standpoint? Curious to hear it.
Man, I was actually so mad about it because I made it a personal promise. Like, I'm going to stay up through all the post coverage and this and that. So I got to about, I think it was like 1:30 a.m. Eastern time. And I was like, you know what? This is probably safe to go to sleep. Like, usually you hear some rumblings and stuff, and I hadn't seen anything. And I was like, you know what? This is probably good because everyone was kind of clued in that something might be up with the whole radio messages to Lando, the fuel, this and that. And just that piques my curiosity. Let's see what happens. I saw Andrea Stella say, we're safe, we're good. I gave it some more time. I said, you know what? It's a good time to just call it a night. I've been sitting at my TV and at my computer screen for I don't know how many hours at this point. It's time for bed. I wake up at about I think it must have been like 5:30 or whatever, and I just like grab my phone. I see text from my brother first off of like, oh my God, like McLaren disqualified Max is only 24 back. And I'm like, what? What is happening? I go to my Twitter. I have like DMs from like I don't know how many people like wake up. Like, we need a new chart of how Max can mathematically catch up. And sure enough, I go to the Formula One social media page and I see like disqualified. And I'm like, what kind of bizarre world did I just wake up in? And sure enough, it was the plank wear or the skid. And you see that and you're kind of like, oh, okay, that adds up now. But yeah, what a bizarre turn of events. And I mean, it kind of fits the bill for how this season and this championship battle has gone. Like if you told someone at any point of the season, like you told someone in Monza that Max is going to make this comeback, you'd say no way. If you told someone, oh yeah, McLarens are both going to get disqualified with 2 races left, they'd say no way. But here we are now, 24 points between Lando to Piastri, 24 between Lando to Max, and it's game on again.
And I think it all stands point because if we want to talk about Vegas really quickly as a race, it was it was a very exciting race. Max was able to catch Lando on the first turn and been able to maintain that lead throughout the race, and Lando had no position to catch him. But you talk about at 42 points because Max would have gained probably plus 8 points with that race win. Um, you were kind of hoping that maybe Lando would have fall more to kind of get more competitive, but like the fact that this just opened everything off, like this Pandora box, and maybe you just want to read a little bit from the stewards what they said here. The rear skids of car 4 were measured and found to be below the minimum thickness of 9 mm specified under Article 3.59 of the technical regulations. So and I heard a couple of other reporters talk about how the car looked very fast. There was a lot of sparks throughout that normally they didn't see when it comes with the plank. And if for those that don't know, this is the same disqualification that Lewis Hamilton got I believe it must have been China.
China, yeah,
Yeah,
both
so
Ferraris.
both Ferraris,
You lose.
just the
And I
tra
mean, if you go back to even the China weekend, what was the China weekend? It was a sprint, and there's not a lot of time to set up the car. And I think that's basically what happened here. Like McLaren got caught out, with FP1, FP2, FP3. Whether it was a manhole cover or just rain, or McLaren had problems in FP3 too. There really wasn't a lot of representative running for McLaren or any team to get that kind of data that they need. And a lot of teams, they try to test the limits in practice first. They'll put the car really low and just work their way back up from there based on whatever their data says. But without any running or representative running, it just becomes a gamble now. And McLaren seemingly, gambled too hard. And one can ask, like, did they really need to? When you really think about it, Lando could have finished P4, P5 in the last three races and still walked his way to the championship, assuming that Piastri's form stayed the same, which, based off track record, it has. And, they gambled. And this was supposed to be a track that historically isn't great for them. And they came out and they looked just as McLaren does, which is competitive everywhere. So yeah, and I try not to look into. I saw those things online too of like, oh well, if you look, the floor is sparking here, and because I saw someone point out that same thing happened in Bahrain, and they weren't checked in Bahrain, but that's just like a natural. When the downforce sucks a car to the floor, they bottom out, and sometimes you get those sparks. I do think that it's kind of funny looking back at those radios that Lando was getting, like, okay, time to go get Max, and it was all basically mind games, I guess. Whether they knew that maybe they were pushing the limits already by that point, who knows? And they were just trying to get a mistake out of Max as well. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of maybe what ifs, or what would McLaren do differently at the end of the season when we look back at this race and how the championship fight ends. And I think my last point on this is just, I think this is a good race it shows the experience and who has sharpened their sword when it comes to these championship battles. Like, you look at Max, he's been there before. He had that 2021 huge, intense fight with Lewis, and it kind of almost felt like Max became 2021 Lewis. Like, on the opening lap, we had Lando complaining about Max taking the piss by leaving, too many cars in between. And if you remember 2021 in Saudi Arabia, it was kind of the same thing, except it was Max complaining that Lewis was taking too long and he was going to lead to cold tires. And the roles have kind of flipped now. Red Bull's also been in this kind of fight before. Obviously not with Mekis. They were there with Horner before, but they just kind of know what to expect. And McLaren doesn't. And maybe it's starting to show these little cracks. The next two tracks should favor them more. So maybe this will all just be irrelevant by the time we get to the end of the season. But very interesting comparisons there, I think.
there's so much to impact there, Daniel. Like I think, going off the talk about like the what if scenarios, while like I think it has been, there's no secret it's been a dominant year for McLaren, but there's been moments throughout the season, whether if it's been papaya rules or whatever between their drivers, that like really it shouldn't have, you guys should have, this should have probably been sealed, many races ago, and especially how successful they've been in the constructors. And, maybe if it was Oscar at the beginning, they prioritize him and then Lando. But like now you're put in a situation where it's basically like catching distance. And you see Max had four races from start to finish by himself this season. He's been absolutely dominant in this kind of run. And I mean, it's like the world's his oyster. He's got nothing to lose. And he said that when he was in Brazil, he did not have a good qualification. He says, I'm going to go out there. What's the worst can happen?
Yeah, and this has kind of been my point all year, where I just feel like a lot of McLaren's mistakes aren't so much that they're like being forced into mistakes. They all feel self-inflicted, or just like they haven't gotten out of their own way. And I sometimes, for most of this, I'm not even talking about the drivers themselves. I'm just talking about the way they've been managed. It's almost like they've beaten the dead horse with this, where you're not going to favor one driver. We're going to let them settle it out. That they've almost done like the opposite of what they wanted, where they've now created this battle where neither Oscar or Orlando have like momentum, and they gave it all away back to Max. And you think of the Monza swap, which was another distraction that really wasn't needed. You think in Canada when Lando collided with Piastri, like it was almost like something like everybody watching that race knew it was going to happen, and sure enough, it happened because they were just so hell bent on we're going to let our guys race. And now, that's how a 104-point deficit for Max becomes a 24-point deficit. How he's now tied on points with Piastri. And, I'm sure that'll provoke another big conversation of is it time for McLaren to prioritize the driver? And, it was probably time after Mexico or, just going on how Piastri was performing then. But then you also have the question or the reality, I guess, of how do they implement that now based on what they've said their philosophy has been for the last year or 2 years? And number two, what difference does it make? Like Piastri hasn't been up there anyways to help Lando. So yeah, they're in a very tricky situation.
Well, I think personally, I think Oscar was probably fine with the disqualification. 'Cause now, like, if you really had to see from the two probably perspectives, I think I heard a reporter where, maybe Lando was very quiet about it, and then when Max and sorry, not Max, Mark Webber and Oscar left, they just said, "Oh, bye everybody, have a good night." Just
Yeah.
kind of like, all right, we're tracking, we're tracking. But another thing that some of our followers wanted to talk about for this weekend. This little fun battle that has been coming with the George and Kimmy. We got to talk a little bit about like an amazing weekend for both the Mercedes drivers. Kimmy Antonelli from the 17th on the grid to come to P3rd. Well, technically P5, but get promoted up to P3. And because he's 19 years old, he can't even go to the clubs in Las Vegas. So he has to party in his locker room. But yes, another double podium for the Mercedes driver. And those are two drivers I'm going to be looking for. How is the rest of the season going to go? But the battle is going to happen next year with them.
Man, it's been awesome to see this kind of rise of Kimmy over the last couple of races. I know we touched on it last time it was on too, but it just feels like with each passing weekend, he grows a step. And starting P17, how many times over the European stretch did we see Kimmy have a bad qualifying and just he's unable to rebound from it? And sure enough, here takes a gamble, takes those hard tires, 48 laps to the end, and he's pumping in laps faster than the guys on fresher tire at the end. And I know I don't know if it was Toto, but I know Mercedes was saying that they're going to look into their tire strategy because if you saw like George's times were just like at missile. They were so bad on the hards, but Kimmy just kept pumping in fast laps and kept heating those tires, and he did a terrific job. And George might have like the most under the radar P2 of the season here. Comes P2, he did not have great pace at all weekend, but there he is, second on the podium. And I know there's that whole like George Russell meme of like does nothing, finishes P3 anyways. But that is the characteristics of just a great driver who even on weekends where they're not at their best, they can still bag a P2 and finish on the podium. And George has been the one of the best at that this season.
And I think just like goes to show like while it was 23 seconds from Max Verstappen, but like we talk about that discipline. It's like yeah, he does in theory doesn't nothing because he's in this open air because we've got no one around him. He can't catch Max Verstappen. Nobody behind him's catching him. But if he's disciplined for 50 laps to hold that space. I was kind of wondering what, a couple of teams were going to be for Las Vegas. When I saw the news about the manhole cover again, I said, "Oh no, what are we going through another couple of years again from when the first one is?" I'm just going to read some quick stats for you because I think this is important. It was a sold out event. I also like maybe we'll go back to the drivers because I think there's still a lot to talk about, but this has been a conversation about the future of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. It was a sold out event until the night before, so tickets were still available. They say that 300 fans attended across the 3 days. That is down from 2024, which was 306. Um, I think it was 315 in 2023. But like, I don't know if you saw some photos or videos of like FP1 practice, like the stands were empty.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who has done a complete 180 on this, I gotta admit, when this first came on the calendar, I kind of wasn't buying it. I was like, it's so over the top. But once you just kind of embrace the over the topness of it, and I've become a fan of the track. I know a lot of the drivers too complaining about the tarmac and stuff like that. Um, I think the problem is F1 kind of they 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 got to go. This seems crazy to say after I just talked about them going all over the top, but I think they have to go all in. Like they have to make this even bigger. Make it the season finale or something. The action on track is seemingly delivered every year,
Yeah, we've
and
got some good quality racing there. It's just
yeah,
there's just the stories behind the track and the expensiveness and the $50,000 ticket for Gordon Ramsay's dinner. It's like, okay, well, the average fan
and
can't
it
really
seems like
enjoy that.
F1, through all means necessary, wants to make this its crown jewel. They really want that American audience and that acceptance of getting into the American audience. So just go all in, make it your season finale. I'm sure we would all take it over Abu Dhabi, which has been the finale for a while now, but historically does not produce the best racing atmosphere. If it were up to me, it'd be Interlagos for sure. But I mean, Las Vegas, I'm going to say it should be the season finale, and I think you would see an uptick in commercials, sales, and all of that jazz.
That's it. It's interesting. So I'm going to put in the comment section below and say, what if you had a choice between any track on the grid, current or former, what would be your final grid? And I think you would know this, Daniel. They used to race in Caesar's Palace parking lot back, I think, in the 80s. And actually, that was the deciding race. I don't know who won it that year. I don't quote me, but like I remember it was like 1 point, and people complained of how bad the parking lot was.
Yeah.
Now,
Uh,
go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say that it was a finale, and I think it was Rosberg one year, Kiki Rosberg won one, and then Piquet won the other. Not the race, but they clinched the championship there.
A couple other things I wanted to talk about this weekend. I'm just looking at the top 10. Leclerc finished P4, Carlos P5, Isaac Hadjar, another great weekend, finishing P6, Nico Hulkenberg P7. And, we talked about this, I think, the last episode, the constructor standing for those from ninth to basically sixth, that it's fair game. From Racing Bulls having 90, Sauber at 68, Haas and Aston Martin 73 and 72. Like some of these midfield battles, I'm curious to see how the rest of the season goes. Like I know maybe I'm picking a lot of drivers today, but like I know the Ferraris didn't look the greatest this weekend. Lewis Hamilton another difficult weekend, but oh, sorry, I want to if there's one thing I think they can continue to change about the Grand Prix at Las Vegas, bring the time back. Make it more Eastern time friendly. I liked how it was 3 hours before because we were at a bar for the last one and they had to get a special license. And it's like by the time I got home, it was like 4 in the
Because
morning.
last year it started at midnight, or was it 1?
I think it was like 1 a.m.
I know qualifying was 1 a.m. Eastern time last year. I forget if the race was midnight or if it was also 1, but I do remember it was like a crazy time. And honestly, it makes better sense for Europe too. 11 p.m. our time is like, I think it's 4 a.m. in the UK and 5 a.m. in the rest of Europe. Like, I just don't understand what they were trying to do here. But yeah, I am fully on board with that.
But yeah, who else really impressed you this weekend? I think, for sure we talked about Verstappen, we talked about Mercedes. Um, what were some of your other interesting moments that happened?
I mean, another superb weekend from Carlos Sainz, who put his Williams P3 in qualifying and then came P5 after the disqualifications. And it seems like him and Albon just kind of have been trading back and forth of who gets hot at what time. Albon was really hot to start the season, and now Sainz is really coming to life here at the end. Another thing is I think we got like, what is it? One, two, three rookies in the points. Kimi, Hadjar, Behrman. of course, Behrman's after disqualifications as well. But before this year, we never had any rookies. Granted, there weren't that many in the points in Vegas, and I think it was a great weekend for them. Behrman has been like on fire still, so good to see that. And Hajar has really been pumping in some great performances when it's needed. We talked about, or you mentioned the constructor standing here between sixth and ninth, and there's a lot of money on the line, between finishing sixth and finishing nine. Like, it might not seem like a lot, but that could be a lot of money for a team like Haas or I'm sure maybe Sauber won't need it with Audi coming in, and Aston Martin seems to be okay, but a lot of money at stake there. So
Oh, we got a lot to talk about Aston Martin. Don't you worry. I mean, it's been almost 20 minutes of the episode, and we still have not talked about Aston Martin, but we'll get there. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting how the rest of the season is going to go in terms of the constructors fight. So, segueing on, we're going to try to hit these topics as fast as we can. There's still a lot. So, first, I just want to move over to the news about Mick Schumacher making the jump to NTT IndyCar Series. So I don't know if you saw this, but he is now joining the IndyCar Series next year. So that means he's going to be racing in Markham
exciting.
in next summer. So that'll be exciting. 49 days later, after his test drive, RLL, which is the Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, he will drive the number 47 Honda for the entire 2026 season. I know it was a conversation. Kind of happy that he's found a place. I know since, while F1 did not go well with him in perspectives of that Haas car was struggled to begin with when he was there, but I'm happy that he's landed places, and maybe I'll try to get a question out of him and see what his thoughts are about IndyCar.
He is an easy driver to root for, and I know didn't work out for him in F1, but he's been doing quality stuff in endurance racing, and yeah, I'm happy to be able to have a chance to see him in North America too. I'm just, when I heard about it, I was like trying to imagine, like, can you imagine telling my dad, who huge Michael Schumacher fan, that he would get to see a Schumacher race on the streets of Markham? Who would have thought?
That's a good point. And like, we've seen a number of F1 drivers, well, maybe their careers did not go as planned in F1, but been able to, do some magic in IndyCar. Roman Grosjean is a good example. And there's a couple, even some people that have been promoted from IndyCar to F2 to get their super license. We talked about Colton Herta a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to kind of see, and hopefully he'll be able to get that confidence. Just
And his
really,
dad,
yeah.
his dad famously had those comments about IndyCar like way back, no? Uh, Michael, when he was like, like failed F1 drivers go to IndyCar or something. It was something along those lines. I was way too young to remember. I don't think I had conscious thoughts then, but it was something like that.
Oh, yeah, we were all playing with our Hot Wheels back as kids, so maybe that was when he said it. Just really quickly, I just want to just talk the F1 Academy. So it just finished up this weekend. Unfortunately, our Canadian driver or friend of the pod, Nicole Havard, was not able to score points this weekend, despite some carnage that happened in both the races. They were able to crown a champion this weekend, and I think honestly, for Dorian Pin driving with Mercedes, it was really exciting to see the race happen in Montreal, but it was really exciting to kind of top off a season for F1 Academy, and it's only going to go up. I know there's some conversations of who's going to be coming in next season because I think 4 or 5 spots open up automatically. But it was pretty wild to watch the last couple of races in Las Vegas. How it came down.
Mercedes, the biggest winners of Las Vegas, double podium, Pin winning the title.
It's Mercedes team to watch. Okay. So last thing we need to talk about Aston Martin. So this news broke today. I don't even know if you had this on your bingo card, Daniel, but news came out today that Adrian Newey is going to become Aston Martin's team principal from 2026 as Andy Cowell will take on new role. Interesting. I'm trying to understand the kind of the perspectives, but this is Aston Martin's will have their 4th team principal within 4 years. You had Otmar in 2021. You had Mike Kraft at 2022 to 2024. Andy Cowell 2025. And now Adrian Newey. Newey will be the 3rd team principal over the last 3 seasons when the 2026 begins. Guess out of
Yeah.
curiosity, what do you think of this move? Personally, I don't really see Adrian Newey as a guy to talk to media. I feel like he's a guy that just sits in the factory all day. That's just his mentality for
So
me.
whenever stuff like this happens, like news breaks in Formula One, and it's head scratching news, I always try to think of like what is the positive spin on this, or what are they going for here? And I can't grasp this one. So Aston Martin, they go out, Aston Martin has money. They go out, they make this huge signing of getting Adrian Newey in the building to design their new car in 2026 and, put a rocket on them and shoot them up the standings. Get Fernando Alonso the car he finally deserves. But then you have to ask, is it really the best source or best like use of resources to now have this guy have to do media relations, interviews. He's got to be in the fan zone. Like that's not who Adrian Newey is. And they might have some kind of structure where they say like he'll still be able to handle both, or I don't know what kind of leadership structure they're going to have in that aspect. But it just feels like this is not the right use of, or you're not maximizing Adrian Newey for who he is if he's going to be doing team principal stuff. He is a guy who should be just tucked away in the factory. Here's the key to the room, lock him in there, and he's just brainstorming, drawing his sketches or whatever, because that is what works. It is what has been proven works for the last 3 decades in Formula One. That is the best way to maximize him, and it's what he enjoys.
It,
Now, there are rumors that there was some kind of power dynamic between Newey and Cowell not seeing eye to eye on the future of the car. There, buzz about Christian Horner being there. So I don't know what to make of it, but when you have three different team principals in 3 years, and it's always a case of we're doing a restructuring, or this guy's moving here, and we're moving this guy to a different role. Like that's just kind of the corporate way of saying that you've been kind of sacked, or so I don't know. Aston Martin, it's a tough one. And not something you maybe want to see when you're kind of heading into a new regulation, especially with the new power unit supplier, Honda, coming on board too. And you kind of need everything already aligned and, ready to go full steam ahead. You shouldn't be, you know, mix and matching things here and there, especially with a guy like Newey, who comes with a proven track record and is a proven championship builder.
yeah, and I think I missed this in the press release. So Andy Cowell will be the chief strategy officer. His focus will be optimizing the technical partnership between the team, works, engine supplier. Very interesting because that's literally what I feel like this should be Adrian Newey. This
Yeah.
is like what I think of these. Okay,
I mean,
engine,
Cal has
fuel.
history with Mercedes. He was, one of the big figures behind their power unit project, but it just feels like, Honda's been on board for a while now. The engines have already been run in the dyno and stuff. Like what do you need him to do here? So just, I guess that's just their way of phrasing it to put it in a nice way. But yeah, I would be very curious what actually happened behind the scenes that led to this being necessary, because, it was Sunday night. After the disqualifications or during the disqualifications, where that's where the news leaked that, oh, Horner could be going to Aston Martin, and very convenient time to leak that news to try to get it buried by the McLaren DQ. But yeah, it's a very interesting team, and not one that has been very stable. And past history is the greatest indicator of what's going to happen in the future. And Aston Martin just kind of has struggled to stay aligned ever since that magical 2023 season that they had.
I'm gonna be honest. It's like when I thought this was like the F1 troll post when I first saw it come up. Like they're just trying to move the chairs in the sinking ship. Like I didn't really think that it was a real post. And then when it was the F1, and then I'm literally on the reading the press release. Also, they don't have the most flattering photos of both of them in the press release. I'm gonna be very honest here on the F1 website. But that's not my decision, so that's theirs, whatever. I think we should wrap up this week's episode. I know we're gonna be going into Qatar. We got the last sprint race of the season, so there's mega points there to capture. I know there are some different strategies in a term like for this track like Qatar compared to Las Vegas. We could save that on next week's episode. very fortunate to have you on again, Daniel. And thank you so much. And reminder everybody to come out to Garden Bar Bodega to catch the Qatar Grand Prix. Every episode has changed as in terms of our talking points or what like in the standings. I just like I'll turn it over to you as the last comment if you want, Daniel. But do you think that it's possible that Max might pull this off?
I
Qatar?
mean, honestly, going to bed Saturday night, or I guess it would have been Sunday morning at that point, I was like, you know what? Lando's got this in the bag, but Max has made it fun and interesting. And yeah, that's about all you can ask for in a season. And now it's kind of like, well, he might actually do this, but I think it just comes down to if McLaren can stay out of their own way. And, they've kind of put Lando and, I mean, Piastri, I guess, too, in a high pressure situation now, even though they had built them and they built them this kind of nice comfort cushion. And they just completely destroyed that because of Vegas. So if Lando really wants to prove it that he is able to withstand the pressure, there's no better time than Qatar, and we'll see what happens after this weekend.
Season 5, episode 31 of the F1 podcast. Daniel, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I am Ricci. Andrew couldn't make it to this week's episode, so tune in next week as we'll highlight and summarize the Qatar Grand Prix and see where the driver's standing will be in a week's time. Thanks, everyone.